The sun was setting over Los Angeles as Marilyn drove her sleek, black Tesla silently up the driveway earlier than usual. Her mind was still buzzing from the day's board meeting, but the sight of Elijah's motorcycle parked at an odd angle hinted at something unusual. As she stepped through the front door, the aroma of roasted garlic and fresh basil wafted toward her, soft jazz music playing in the background. Surprised and slightly curious, she loosened her scarf, her steps quickening with anticipation. Elijah, hearing the door, peeked from the kitchen, a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. His face, usually calm and welcoming, tightened when he saw Marilyn. Why so early today? His voice carried a mix of surprise and a pinch of worry. Marilyn, caught off guard by the tone, rather than the question, raised her eyebrows. "Is there a specific time I'm supposed to come home now?" she responded, her voice a mixture of amusement and challenge. No, that's not what I meant." Elijah stumbled over his words as he approached, trying to smooth over his initial reaction. "I just thought, well, I was planning a little something and you're here earlier than I expected." Marilyn's eyes softened slightly, noticing the efforts in the living room. The table was set beautifully, candles lined up unlit, and what appeared to be a feast under preparation. "A surprise, huh? I thought we were past the stage of needing appointments in our own house," she said, half teasing, half serious. Elijah, catching the undercurrent of her words, took a deep breath. "Marilyn, it's not about controlling when you come home. I just wanted to make tonight special, and now it feels like I'm being interrogated." Marilyn draped her purse over the chair, her business demeanor melting away slightly. "Elijah, I appreciate the effort, really. But you don't have to set up a gala dinner just because I'm home on time or early, for that matter." Elijah nodded, trying to gauge her mood. "I know I don't have to, but I wanted to. Can't a guy cook his wife a fancy dinner without making a federal case out of it?" Marilyn chuckled, her tension easing. "All right, Truce, it smells amazing, and honestly, I'm starving. But let's skip the formalities next time. I like surprises, but I love transparency more." Elijah smiled, relief washing over him. "Deal. No more surprise dinners, or at least, no more being weird about timing. Let's just enjoy the evening." As Marilyn walked towards him, she playfully nudged his arm. "So, chef, what's on the menu for tonight?" "Your favorite garlic basil chicken. And I've tried that new recipe for the risotto you mentioned last week." And Elijah paused for dramatic effect. "A chocolate lava cake for dessert." Marilyn's smile broadened. "Sounds perfect. Let's light those candles, and you can tell me all about how you pulled this off." As they moved together, the earlier tension dissolved, replaced by the comforting rhythms of their shared life. The evening promised a reconnection, yet beneath the surface, the seeds of misunderstanding had already been sown, waiting for the right moment to sprout. The dinner progressed with the easy banter and shared laughter that marked the best moments of Marilyn and Elijah's marriage. However, as the dishes were cleared and the last of the wine poured, a pensive silence fell over the table. Marilyn swirled the wine in her glass, watching the light dance through the ruby liquid, her mind racing with unasked questions. Elijah, noticing the shift in mood, leaned back in his chair. "You've been quiet. What's on your mind, Lynn?" Marilyn set down her glass, her gaze steady. "I was just thinking about us, about how everything has changed since you moved in and we got married. Do you ever feel overshadowed by all this?" She gestured around the expansive room, her voice soft but direct. Elijah's expression darkened briefly. "What do you mean by overshadowed?" "You know, me being the CEO, the big house, the fancy cars. I sometimes wonder if it's all too much for you. If you feel like you're living in my world rather than us sharing one." Elijah sighed, rubbing his temples. "I won't lie. It's a lot. I went from counting every penny to not needing to look at price tags. But it's more than that. I feel like I've lost a bit of myself in your success. I used to be the one people came to for fitness advice, and now I'm just Marilyn's husband." Marilyn reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Eli, you are so much more than that to me. You're my partner, my confidant. But if you feel lost, why haven't you said anything?" It's not easy to admit that you feel less than in your own home, Marilyn, and when everyone looks at us, they see this power couple. How do I say I'm struggling without sounding ungrateful? Marilyn nodded, her heart aching. I get it, and I'm sorry if I've contributed to those feelings. But we're in this together. We need to figure out how you can feel like you're thriving, not just surviving. Elijah took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. I want that too. But it means making some changes. Maybe I need something of my own, something that isn't tied to your money or your company's. Then let's do that, Marilyn said decisively. Start a business, get back into training, whatever makes you feel like you again. We have the resources, use them. Elijah smiled, a mix of relief and newfound determination in his eyes. Thanks, Lynn. It means a lot to hear you support me like that. I think I needed this push. Marilyn squeezed his hand, a plan forming in her mind. How about we start tomorrow? We can look at what you're passionate about and find a way to make it happen. I love you, Eli, and I want you to be happy. As they stood and began to clear the table together, the air felt lighter around them. But inside Elijah, a storm was brewing. The offer was generous, but part of him wondered if his desire for independence could truly be fulfilled with the help of Marilyn's resources. Would it ever really be his success, or just an extension of hers? The question lingered, unspoken, as they headed into the living room to enjoy the rest of their evening. The next morning found Elijah on their spacious patio, nursing a coffee as he watched the sun climb over the city skyline. The conversation from the night before replayed in his mind, echoing between gratitude and a gnawing sense of inadequacy. Marilyn's support was unwavering, but it didn't fill the gaps in his self-worth that had widened since their marriage. As Marilyn joined him, wrapping a light shawl around her shoulders against the morning chill, she noticed the pensive look on his face. "Penny for your thoughts," she asked, sitting beside him with her own cup of coffee. Elijah smiled weakly, shaking his head. "Just thinking about what we talked about last night, about starting something new." "That's a good thing," right? Marilyn's voice was hopeful, her hand finding his. "It is. It's just. I'm struggling with where to begin. It feels like I'm starting from scratch, and at my age, that's a bit daunting." Marilyn's expression softened. "I understand. But remember, you're not alone in this. I'm here every step of the way." Elijah nodded, appreciating her words yet feeling the sting of dependency. "Sometimes I wish I had accomplished something substantial on my own, something that didn't need your backing. It's hard not to feel like I'm just riding your coattails." Marilyn sighed, her brow furrowing. "Elijah, that's not how I see it, or how anyone who truly knows you sees it. You're not less because our situations are different. Your strength, your support, it's what keeps me grounded." He looked at her, wanting to believe her fully. "I know you mean that, but it's tough, Lynn. When we go out at parties, meetings, I see the way people look at us. There goes Marilyn and her husband and not Elijah, the guy who used to have a thriving fitness business." Marilyn leaned in, her voice earnest. "Then let's change that narrative. You were amazing at what you did, and you still can be. Why not rebuild that part of your life? Not for them or for me, but for you." Elijah's eyes locked on hers, a mix of emotions swirling within. "Maybe you're right. I should rebuild. Not just something new, but something that's truly mine." Exactly. Marilyn's face brightened. "Let's look at properties today. A studio, perhaps. You could design it, run it. I'll help with the finances to start, but it'll be your project, your vision." Elijah considered this, a spark of his old ambition flickering to life. A studio. Yeah, I could see that. Training, maybe even a little community outreach. Get back to what I love. Marilyn smiled, relieved to see him animated. "That sounds perfect. You were always great with people, Eli. They loved you not because of me or my money, but because you made them feel stronger, better." His chest warmed with her words, yet a part of him still ached for the independence of success earned solely through his own efforts. "Thanks, Lynn. I guess it's time to stop feeling sorry for myself and start doing something about it." As they discussed potential locations and business models, Elijah felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, the underlying resentment lingered unseen, unspoken but slowly simmering beneath the surface, waiting for a trigger to bring it all to a boil. Elijah stood in the dim light of the corner coffee shop, eyes scanning for Alexis, the barista with a bright smile and dreams that matched his. As he waited, his heart raced not just from the anticipation of stolen moments, but also from the guilt that gnawed at him. He knew this wasn't just about a coffee anymore. Alexis appeared from behind the counter, her apron removed, signaling the end of her shift. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Elijah, I thought you'd never get here. Was traffic bad?" "Yeah," a little Elijah lied, avoiding her gaze for a moment before looking back up with a forced smile. "Can't start my weekend without my favorite barista's magic brew." Alexis laughed, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Well, your latte waits. But first let's get out of here. I need fresh air." They walked side by side to a nearby park, each step intensifying Elijah's inner conflict. He listened as Alexis chatted about her day, her plans for an acting class, and her endless stream of auditions. "So, how's the studio planning going?" Alexis shifted the conversation towards him, genuinely interested. Elijah's shoulders tensed. "It's moving. Marilyn's all in, wants to finance the whole thing." "That's great. Isn't it?" Alexis's tone was light, but her eyes searched his face. "It is. But it still feels like it's her project, not mine." Elijah's voice was low, almost a whisper, as if admitting a secret. Alexis stopped walking, turning to face him. "Elijah, why don't you do something just for you? Something that doesn't involve Marilyn's money or influence." "That's exactly what I've been thinking," Elijah confessed, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "Actually, that's part of why I wanted to see you today." Oh, Alexis's eyebrows raised, curiosity piqued. I've been feeling trapped, Alexis. Like I'm living someone else's life. I need a change. Elijah paused, struggling with his honesty. "You need an escape," Alexis finished for him, her voice soft but certain. "Yes, an escape." And I was hoping. Elijah's voice broke off, unsure. Alexis reached out, her hand gently squeezing his. "You were hoping I might come with you?" Elijah nodded, his heart thumping loud in his chest. "Yes, I want to start over. Build something real and mine ours. Maybe somewhere new where no one knows us." Alexis's face lit up, then clouded with concern. "But what about Marilyn? What will you tell her?" "I'll figure something out. I have some money saved up, not much, but enough to get us started. And I'm thinking of taking a bit more from our joint account just until we get settled." Alexis bit her lip, torn between the thrill of adventure and the morality of their actions. "Elijah, are you sure? This is big, running away together. It's not just a weekend adventure." "I know it's big, but I've never been more sure about anything. Being with you, starting fresh, it feels right. It's now or never, Alexis." As they resumed walking, hands intertwined, the park's autumn leaves rustling underfoot, Elijah felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. He was stepping into a new chapter, one filled with promise but shadowed by deception. In his heart, he knew there was no turning back, even as he wondered if the cost of this new beginning might be higher than he anticipated. Back at their home, Elijah was in the study, surrounded by papers and his laptop open with tabs on cryptocurrency trends, white papers and market analysis. He was deep in thought, crafting what he believed was a bulletproof pitch to Marilyn about a groundbreaking investment opportunity, a cryptocurrency that could potentially yield high returns. As Marilyn walked into the room, she noticed the intense look of concentration on Elijah's face. "Working on something big?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe with a curious smile. Elijah looked up, masking his anxiety with a confident smile. "Actually, yes. I think I've found something that could really be a game changer for us, well, for the market, really." Marilyn raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, tell me more." Taking a deep breath, Elijah launched into his rehearsed pitch. It's a new cryptocurrency. I've been following the developers for a while now, and they're about to go public with their initial coin offering. The tech is solid. It's backed by blockchain technology that's more advanced than anything currently out there. It could disrupt the market. Marilyn walked over and sat down beside him, her expression a mix of interest and skepticism. You know I've always been cautious with crypto. It's volatile. What makes this one different? Elijah, prepared for this, continued, this isn't just any crypto. It has real-world applications, from securing medical records to streamlining governmental operations globally. And the best part? It's environmentally friendly, unlike most others. Marilyn nodded, considering his words. It sounds promising, but also like a big risk. How much are you thinking of investing? Here's the thing, I believe in this so much that I think we should go in with $200,000 initially. It's a lot, I know, but I'm confident it will pay off, Elijah said, trying to sound as convincing as possible. Marilyn pursed her lips, then sighed. Elijah, it's not just the amount, it's the risk. And your sudden jump into this. Have you thought this through? Really thought it through? Yes, I have. And I wouldn't bring it to you if I wasn't sure. We could use the profits to fund my studio independently. It could be a way for me to make my own mark, Elijah said, playing on both their desires for him to be more independent. Marilyn leaned back, rubbing her temples. I want to support you, Elijah, I really do. But I need to think about this. Can you show me the research? I'd like to read up on it myself. Elijah hesitated, then nodded. Of course. I'll email everything to you. As Marilyn left the room, Elijah let out a long breath. His plan was riskier than he let on. The money wasn't just an investment, it was his ticket out with Alexis. He opened his laptop again, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, feeling the weight of the gamble he was about to take. Later that night, Marilyn, after reviewing the materials Elijah had sent, had more questions. This all looks promising, Elijah, but it's based a lot on speculation. These projections are optimistic, at best. Have you looked into the backgrounds of these developers? Elijah fidgeted, unprepared for the depth of her scrutiny. I've looked into them as much as I can. They're solid, really. Marilyn looked at him, her gaze sharp. I love your enthusiasm, but we need more than that for such a substantial investment. Let's do this. I'll have our financial advisor take a look at this. Get a second opinion. Elijah's heart sank as he nodded slowly. Okay, that sounds fair. As Marilyn dialed their financial advisor to set up a meeting, Elijah realized that his plan might be unraveling faster than he could spin it. His dream of a new life with Alexis was clashing with the reality of Marilyn's thoroughness and the precariousness of his scheme. A few days later, the atmosphere in the expansive home was noticeably tenser. Marilyn had arranged for her financial advisor, Thomas, to review Elijah's proposed cryptocurrency investment. The meeting, held in Marilyn's sleek home office, had both Elijah and Marilyn sitting across from Thomas, who had several documents spread out in front of him. Thomas adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began, I've gone through the documents and done some additional digging on this cryptocurrency, and I have to say, there are several red flags that concern me. Elijah's stomach tightened, but he managed a calm facade. Like what? The tech is solid, and the market projections are strong. Thomas glanced at his notes, then back at Elijah. First, the developers. There's very little verifiable background information on them, which is unusual for a project seeking this level of funding. Second, the claims about environmental friendliness and governmental partnerships seem exaggerated without substantial proof. Marilyn listened intently, her face expressionless. And the financials. The financials are speculative, highly optimistic, and not backed by independent analysis. There's a significant risk of loss here, Thomas concluded, his tone firm yet cautious. Elijah tried to interject, but every investment has risks, Thomas. This could be a major breakthrough. Marilyn raised her hand slightly, silencing Elijah. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate your thoroughness. We'll take your findings into consideration, she nodded to Thomas, who gathered his papers and left the room, leaving them alone. Once the door closed, Marilyn turned to Elijah, her expression hardening. "Elijah, why didn't you vet these things more thoroughly? This was a lot of money you were ready to gamble." Elijah's desperation crept into his voice. "Marilyn, I believed in it. I thought we could make a real profit, and I needed something to be mine, to prove I could contribute more than just being your husband." Marilyn's eyes softened slightly, but her voice remained steady. "I understand wanting to make your mark, Elijah, but not like this. Not by risking our financial security on an unproven venture, and not by keeping me in the dark about your real intentions." Elijah felt cornered, the walls closing in on him as the weight of his deceit became unbearable. "Marilyn, I'm sorry. I thought if I pulled it off, I could finally feel equal in this relationship." Marilyn stood up, pacing slowly before stopping in front of him. "Elijah, you are my equal in marriage and in life. But this isn't the way to prove yourself. It's dishonest and reckless." Feeling his world crumbling, Elijah knew he had to confess everything. "There's more. I've been seeing someone else. Alexis, it wasn't just about the money. I was planning to leave." His voice trailed off, not daring to meet Marilyn's gaze. The room fell silent, the air thick with betrayal. Marilyn stood motionless, processing the confession. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally spoke, her voice quiet but deadly calm. "I think you should leave, Elijah. I need to think about all of this. About us." Elijah, his face pale, nodded slowly, his plans for a new life shattered by his own doing. As he stood and walked toward the door, the finality of his choices sank in. He had gambled everything: his marriage, his integrity, his future, and lost. The days following Elijah's confession were filled with a suffocating silence in the house. Marilyn had retreated into herself, grappling with the betrayal and what it meant for their future. Elijah, meanwhile, was staying in the guest room, a mix of guilt and confusion clouding his thoughts. Late one evening, Marilyn knocked softly on the door of the guest room. Elijah, who had been lying on the bed staring at the ceiling, sat up quickly. "Yes." Marilyn entered, her posture rigid, yet her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. She sat at the edge of the bed, keeping a careful distance from Elijah. "We need to talk." Elijah nodded, his heart sinking. "I know. Marilyn, I'm so sorry." Marilyn held up her hand, stopping him. "I've heard your apologies, Elijah. Right now I need to understand. Why did you do it? Why her? Why the lies?" Elijah sighed, a weary sound. "I felt lost, Marilyn. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. With Alexis, I felt seen, like I could start fresh, be someone important again." Marilyn listened quietly, her face a mask of calm. "And the money? Risking everything we have." "It was foolish," Elijah admitted, rubbing his face with his hands. "I thought if I could make it big, I could prove to you, to everyone, that I was more than just your husband. That I didn't need your money to be successful." Marilyn's expression softened slightly. "Elijah, you never had to prove anything to me. I loved you for who you were, not what you brought to the table financially. But you chose to step outside our marriage, to lie and nearly steal. You chose to betray my trust." Elijah felt the weight of each word, knowing she was right. "I know. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Marilyn, is there any way we can get past this? Any way I can make this right?" Marilyn paused, considering his words carefully. "I've thought about that. A lot. I'm willing to offer you a chance at redemption, Elijah. Not for our marriage that's beyond repair now, but for you as a person." Elijah looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Anything, Marilyn. Whatever it takes." Marilyn took a deep breath before continuing. "I want you to go into therapy to really work on yourself, understand why you made these choices. And I want you to be honest with Alexis. If she's the future you chose, she deserves to know everything." Elijah nodded slowly, the reality of the work ahead sinking in. "I can do that. And the studio?" "It's yours," Marilyn said firmly. "I'll fund it as we agreed, but it will be in your name only. It's your chance to build something from the ground up, without me. Prove to yourself you can do it. And you, as Elijah's voice was barely a whisper. Marilyn shook her head, her voice steady but sad. There is no us anymore, Elijah. This is your path now. You need to walk it alone. Elijah swallowed hard, pain and understanding mingling in his chest. I understand. Thank you, Marilyn, for this chance. I won't waste it. As Marilyn stood to leave, she looked at him, her gaze lingering. I hope you find what you're looking for, Elijah. Truly. With that, she left the room, leaving Elijah alone with his thoughts. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine desire to change, to redeem himself not just in Marilyn's eyes, but in his own. In the days following their somber conversation, Elijah began the painful process of self-examination. He attended therapy sessions, confronting the darker parts of his ego and insecurities that had driven him to betrayal. Meanwhile, he communicated openly with Alexis about the entire situation, revealing the truth of his financial schemes and marital discord. To his surprise, Alexis chose to step back, suggesting he needed time alone to heal and find his true path. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room where so many of their shared memories lingered, Marilyn called Elijah to join her. She was sitting on the couch, her posture composed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Elijah took a deep breath before sitting across from her, the distance between them feeling like miles. You wanted to see me? Yes. Elijah Marilyn's voice was calm but carried a weight that filled the room. I've given this a lot of thought, and I believe I've come to a decision that's fair and necessary. Elijah nodded, bracing himself. I'm ready to hear it. Marilyn looked directly into his eyes, her expression resolute. I will not be pressing charges or pursuing any legal action regarding the financial risks you took. I believe your actions, while reckless, were not malicious but driven by personal turmoil and a lost sense of self. Elijah exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and renewed guilt washing over him. Thank you, Marilyn. I don't deserve your leniency. Marilyn continued, however, this does not mean there are no consequences. Effective immediately, you will move out. I've arranged for an apartment for you paid up for the next 6 months. This will give you space and autonomy to rebuild your life independently. Elijah's heart sank, even though he'd known this was coming. I understand. And the studio? It's yours to run as you see fit. I believe it will be good for you, Elijah, to focus on something constructive and truly yours. But Marilyn paused, her voice firm. Our personal ties end here. We will finalize our divorce quietly, and I wish no further contact unless absolutely necessary. Elijah felt a sharp pain in his chest, the finality of her words cutting deep. Marilyn, I hope you know how deeply sorry I am for everything. Marilyn nodded, her eyes showing a glimmer of sadness. I know, Elijah, and I forgive you, not because what you did was acceptable, but because I refuse to carry anger and resentment. Forgiveness is as much for me as it is for you. Elijah stood, feeling suddenly unsteady. Where do I go from here? Marilyn stood as well, her figure dignified and strong. Forward, Elijah. You start anew. This is both an ending and a beginning. Make it count. With a heavy heart, Elijah collected his things over the next few days. When he finally closed the door behind him, stepping out into the uncertain future, he felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Marilyn watched from the window, her heart heavy but her resolve clear. She had done what was necessary, not just for justice but for healing for both of them. As Elijah drove away, the finality set in, but so did a sense of potential. He had lost much, but he carried with him lessons that would define his path forward. The road to redemption was his to walk alone, and he was determined to walk it well. Months had passed since Elijah moved out and began his new life. The studio had taken off, becoming a popular spot in the community for those looking to improve not just their physical health, but their mental and emotional well-being too. Elijah had poured his heart into making it a place of healing, much like the journey he himself was on. One evening, as he was closing up, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Hesitant, He opened it to find a message from Marilyn. His heart skipped a beat as he read. "Hope you're well. I've heard good things about the studio. Looks like you found your path after all. M." Elijah stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Thanks, Marilyn. It's been a journey. Couldn't have done it without that push from you. Hope all is well on your end too." The phone buzzed again shortly after. "Things are good here. I'm glad to see you thriving. It was a tough road, but I always believed you could make something beautiful out of the chaos. Take care, Elijah." Elijah leaned back against the counter, a sigh escaping him. He typed a quick response. "You too, Marilyn. Take care." Putting his phone away, Elijah looked around the now empty studio, a sense of peace settling over him. Marilyn's forgiveness and the consequences she imposed had been his crucible, but they had also set him free to find a deeper purpose and redemption. In her own home, Marilyn put down her phone and gazed out over the city skyline from her balcony. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that Elijah was making the most of the second chance she'd helped give him. It wasn't just about forgiving him, it was about forgiving herself too for any failures she perceived in their marriage. She turned back inside, her mind turning to a new project she was about to embark on, a foundation to support individuals recovering from personal and professional setbacks. Marilyn knew firsthand how pivotal support and a second chance could be. As both Marilyn and Elijah moved forward, their stories continued separately but interwoven by their shared past and mutual growth. They had both learned that strength didn't just come from enduring, but from the ability to transform pain into purpose, betrayal into growth, and each ending into a new beginning. Their journey reminded them, and everyone around them, that even in the darkest moments, humanity and compassion could guide them back to light, and sometimes, the hardest trials could lead to the most rewarding triumphs. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong. Stay inspired.